Well, welcome to the Nation of Artists inside the art studio of Britt Salt, sculptor working in Collingwood in Victoria, in Australia. Britt's sculptures are shown and have been shown at the Helen Gorey Gallery in Paran. And this is Britt. Hi.
Hi.
Tell me a little bit about your space and how it's kind of informed your work. What kind of space were you in before this one? Obviously, this one's got incredible amount of natural light. Has that changed or helped you in your sculptural installation pieces?
It's really important, yeah. The amount of natural light. The studio I was in before this one was actually completely dark. It was in the depths of this old sheep shearing, big old warehouse building, and there was just one sort of neon light, and it was pitch black otherwise. And so I walk around in the dark a lot here if there's no natural light quite often.
And what are these pieces on the wall up here? Are these inspiration for whatever you're doing next?
Deflated balloon.
Deflated balloon. Does that represent something?
They've sort of, I suppose, they're sort of. I was interested in sort of watching them and seeing them change because a lot of my other works change. I was sort of looking at balloons as support structures for little works. Although I've been away for a few weeks and they're all deflated now.
And what are these names up here? Flexible, connectivity, the shape of things, moving pause.
They're all sort of just little ideas that I sort of stumbled across and wanted to hold on to. A lot of the time there's sort of, I play off opposites, so things like a flexible frame, something that's solid that will actually move, or a moving pause where it's a stuck point but it's in the middle of something and it's still moving. They all sort of relate back to the way that my works chop and change, and a lot of them are suspended where I'm at the moment.
Yeah.
That's sort of the way I like to work, because people walk into the space and they sort of start to move because the air around them and the environment's changing. So they sort of gear into action, and then when there's no one there, they sort of stop and settle. So there's always this sort of constant movement. It's sort of like when you see something out of the corner of your eye.
Yeah.
It sort of like makes you turn and do a double. Yeah.
So these pieces that are hanging in here, is that because they're works in progress, or because they inspire other works, or just because this is where they are?
I suppose I've just finished a show, so I've just started bringing works back out that either didn't quite make it, or I wanted to keep going and working on. So I sort of started bringing out elements of things that jobs to do, basically. And
these are your materials behind you, like just rolls of like aluminium. What is it? What do you call it?
There's different grades of aluminium that are sort of powder coated. That's the black. So they can sort of deal with. I mean, it's all hardware stuff, or things that I can sort of get from industrial stockists. But
so you do get them from industrial places rather than from art stores, or
yeah. It's much better. You sort of can walk into mesh heaven. They have so much of it, but I always sort of like having a bulk of material around, just to sort of grab and go with.
And they look so soft and so material-like, but obviously they've got a very firm structure to them.
Yeah. And in fact, a lot of them do sort of, as you sort of work with them more, they do soften up.
Yeah.
More so, but that's sort of where the folds and things come into my work, is they sort of add a strength structure into the material and let the material sort of what's already there in the material allow it to become stronger.
So do you start with a material and see where it takes you, or do you have an eye for where you want to take that material?
a little from column A, a
Yeah.
little from column B. It's a lot of the time, I mean, I make one work and I've tried a certain series of things out perhaps, and I'll maybe take one of those and move on to another material, change the material. I work a lot in paper to test things out as well. I think paper generally is just a fantastic material to work with, but the transparency of the mesh is the real thing that keeps bringing me back to it. But, but yeah, it's I do sort of work on a sort of process, methodical testing sort of basis, and things just tend to some things stop at that point. You got to leave it and you got to try something else to go on to the next one.
Do you dictate the lighting for your shows as well, so that you get a certain pattern out of the material?
Yeah, I do a lot. I spend a lot of time installing the works, because a lot of the time, as happens with natural light and things, especially natural light that comes indoors, there's a sort of a softened effect. So lighting shows, I do tend to off-light the works, or light them very indirectly.
Yeah.
It does sort of allow them to, elements of them to sort of just be heightened a little.
Yeah. Now, I can see that almost all the works in your space and in your house generally, because this is a live workspace, are yours. Except I did see a book by Oscar Eliason downstairs. Talk about, if you can, like either what inspirational effect other artists have, because, you know, a lot of your work seems to be, you know, fairly unique to you. And maybe not as obvious a correlation between inspirational artists and yourself.
Yeah, I suppose Oliver Eliason's just. I suppose I love the way that he works across. He's got so many different interests that have sort of an elemental line that runs through all of them. Whether it's sort of photographs on a long shutter speed, capturing light moving, which is one of my favourite works, but or his installations. I just I like that exploration of lots of different, the same way of thinking through lots of different elements, I suppose.
Yeah.
There's another artist, Ruth Asawa, who lives in San Francisco, California now. She's big in the 1960s, but she was like, she studied with Joseph Alba, and was in that Black Mountain School, and she's very, basically, it was like a mix between crochet and basketry, but she wove all these great big sculptures out of copper and metal. And Buckminster Fuller loved her, but these sort of forms that moved inside themselves and outside again.
Yeah.
But I loved that sort of methodical process of making something that seemingly couldn't exist.
Yeah. So you find yourself most often drawn to other installation pieces, like things
Quite
that
often,
take up more than two-dimensional space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're probably two people that stand out most.
Yeah. Do you sit here and work like 9 to 5, or do you set yourself times, or do you just wake up in the middle of the night, or work when inspired?
It depends. I suppose it depends. I guess it's like a lot of artists. It depends what else is going on at the time and what else needs to be done. But generally, I tend to like working. I have days of working. Rather than to work at night. It's basically whenever I can.
Yeah.
You know, you've got other jobs to do and things, so...
Do you have a ritual? Do you have to sit down with a cup of tea when you get started?
Always the cup of tea. I don't know. No ritual, I suppose.
Yeah.
Music's important. Always have to have that noise, that music.
Yeah.
Because I do tend to sort of...
And any particular artists, or do you get distracted by music, and choose to just go random?
I like quite a lot of electronic artists, DJs, DJ Shadow, people like that. There's a Melbourne band called I, which are great. They're fantastic.
That's great.
Locals.
and if people want to see your work, with the exception of if they're in Melbourne, obviously going into Helen Gorey and asking her to see some, but where else can they see it? Do you have a site?
I'm also represented by Perth Galleries, so over in WA. I've got work there. I've got a show with them next year, but and then I've got a residency at Pika in Perth as well, the Perth Institute of Contemporary Art. So that'll be great. 3 months. But yeah, Google. I suppose.
It's a Google. All right. Well, thanks for joining us for 10 minutes, Britt. We appreciate the time. Cheers.